Crystal Sailing Club was conceived at an informal meeting of interested sailors at the Crystal Town Hall, August 12, 1961. The meeting was in response to a notice mailed to all known sailors and sailboat owners by Vince Wright and Dr. Tom Baker, who had taken a census of all the sailboats they could find around the lake. Enough interest was expressed to try an informal series of racing during the fall of that year. Some of the attempts at handicapping the mixed fleet were very crude, such as Flying Dutchman shall not cross the starting line until the first of the other boats has passed the first mark. We were learning and having a lot of fun, so on Sunday, November 19, 1961, a group met in Lansing to sign articles of incorporation to get our baby officially born. All who signed up prior to May 5th were designated as charter members. For our first full year of activity, we headquartered at the Maxwell House and sailed from its frontage on the east shore of the lake. For a race committee barge, we alternately appropriated the pontoon barges of Tom Baker and Pete Christensen. Our fleet was divided into two classes. Class 1 was any sailboat over 16 feet long and included Flying Dutchman and our one Flying Scot. Class 2 was for boats 16 feet and shorter, which literally included everyone else. During 1962, our membership reached a total of 20 active and 2 associate members, representing a fleet of 19 sailboats. We began a continuing association with the Crystal Lions Club when they sponsored the first Lions Cup Regatta on the 4th of July. The club also hosted its first major regatta for the Flying Dutchman class. Here we are seeing some of the trophy presentations on the Maxwell House lawn. '63 began with our first midwinter meeting, compliments of Pete and Lucille Christensen in Lansing on January 14th. The club's big projects this year included the purchase of a new race committee barge and the materials for a new dock, which was constructed by the members. Tom Baker was our Commodore that year and is seen here with his family preparing their Flying Dutchman for a busy season. 1963 was a great expansion year for our Flying Dutchman fleet. We see a few of them here. 535-4 with Vince and Barb Wright. 623, Pat and Duane Smith. Pat was learning to trapeze on a semi-dry run at the dock while Duane counterbalanced from the other side. 363 is Doug and Tish Sorick, followed by sons Chris and Chuck and their Flying Junior. 825, Paul and Heidi Himker. 710, Van and Terry Fenwick. 247, L.D. Decker. 681, Irv and Steve Goebel. 577, Paul Christensen, Karen Kohlberg at the helm. In July, our club hosted the third leg of the Region 4 Flying Dutchman Championship Series, which held a special interest since it would also determine the Olympic contender for our 5-state area. The winners were Buddy Melgus and his crew Bill Benson, who later won the national championship and a silver medal in the 1964 Olympics in Tokyo. In 1987, Buddy Melgus was a contending skipper in the America's Cup preliminaries. Here we see the fleet making a refreshment stop at the Lakeside Hotel after one of the races. Melgus and Benson demonstrate their winning form. And following the racing, Commodore Baker presents the trophies. Our racing fleets began to solidify into one design classes this season as our Flying Dutchman and Flying Junior numbers grew. The Maxwell House lawn continued to serve as a scene for regular trophy presentations following our weekend races. 1964, the big news at the midwinter meeting was that the Crystal Sailing Club was to have a permanent home. 13 members formed a separate development corporation and purchased 4 acres of property, which was platted as Skipper's Landing. 1 acre was set aside for the sailing club, and the remainder was subdivided and sold to provide the necessary revenue to construct the clubhouse, which was designed by member Elmer Manson. However, before construction could begin in June, much work needed to be done, and the work piece began in early March. Club members cut over 100 trees of sizable proportions in the low, swampy area where the clubhouse now stands. The entire area had to be regraded to cut down a high spot on the west end and fill in the swamp before the road and gas main could be relocated through the middle. The actual construction of the clubhouse was by Maxwell Smith, Duane's father, general contractor of Crystal. The club officers decided to conduct the season's racing activities from the new site. Each weekend, members were able to check on the progress, and we proceeded to use the clubhouse bit by bit as it took shape. The large fieldstone fireplace was built by Max Smith, who stands proudly by his work. The gals even utilized the skeletal structure as a mess hall for serving some fine meals to visiting sailors during the several regattas we sponsored that summer. One of these regattas was our first Flying Scot Invitational. Here are some of our Flying Scots. 980, Gladys and Jean Martineau and Marie and Elmer Manson. 531, Betty and Joe Kopchak with Joe Jr. in the water. 826, Molly and Dick Grimsberg. Another shot of 980, followed by 266, Laura and George Ferns. Number 761, Jane and Bob Reffier. And who will ever forget number 175, Sam Telshaw. Another memorable event that summer was the famous shrimp party at Pete and Seal Christensen's. Elmer Manson took first prize for the best dressed. Yeah, the beer's just fine, Pete. Time to eat. Come and get it. We proceeded to down great mountains of boiled shrimp, much to the delight of all present. We couldn't eat them all, however, so following our fact, when we got full, we all sat around and shucked more for an upcoming regatta meal. A serious operation. Later on, out came the ukulele and the singing voices warmed up for a sing-along, which shortly moved to the Christensen's pontoon boat for a little tour around the lake. Here, Les Peters and Joe Kopchak seemed to be really harmonizing. During the non-sailing months prior to the 1965 season, Irv Goebel and Duane Smith constructed several 8-foot prams from kits donated by club members. After the prams were delivered to the club, the paint crews took over, and the sailboats were put into service in the new sailing school, which was directed by member Frank McCowan. A new boat hoist donated by member Bob Reffier was installed and received extensive testing by Barb and Vince Wright, assisted by Sam Telshaw. The biggest single event of the 1965 season was the North American Championship of the Flying Junior Organization. There were 26 entries from all over the United States and Canada, including 7 from our Crystal Sailing Club. The sailing conditions during the 3-day series varied from near drifting to blowout, presenting a maximum challenge for the skippers and crews. One local crew was Chris and Chuck Sorek. Another was Duane Smith and Steve Goebel, who happily took home 4th place trophies for the event. And now some people pictures. Freya and Kent Davis, Gene Martineau, Molly Remsburg caught in mid-blink, Duane Smith and his sailing submarine, Doug and Tish Sorek. They sure look relaxed, don't they? Tish woke up later, though, much to Joe Regis's surprise. A skipper's meeting. That's FD sailor Fred Hibbert in the center. Arlen Regis and Irv Goebel. One of our Sears Cup crews, Doug Christensen, Candy McDonald, and Chip Reffier. At the center of this trophy presentation is Crystal merchant Wendy Blanchard, representing the Crystal Lions Club. Somewhere along here, we began a series of annual meetings with the Crystal Lions Club. They brought the food for the picnic, and we took them sailing. 2 familiar Lions Club members are Bob Brundage and our Crystal mailman, Ed McGrath. Roger Rosendale, Arlen Regis, Chris and Chuck Sorek, and Ann, Dr. Joe, and Joe Jr. Kopchik. Marla Smith at the center of a Starboard Cup winner's circle. Arlen Regis and Tom Baker wondering where that camera popped up from. Jane Reffier and Jack Wood. some of the younger set, being entertained by folk singer Danny Rayfeld. Vince Wright and Max Plowman in the water as usual. George Ferns and a daughter. Vince Wright still in the water. Arlen Regis shoveling snow out of Duane Smith's Scott. That's the last time I left my boat in until November. This is a picture of a situation between Bob Reffier and Sam Telshaw during an early fall series, which led to one of our more colorful protest meetings. If you're going to port tack a start, you'd better have a good head of steam, right, Joe? The 1966 season is remembered as the first one in the club's history with no major building project in progress. It was a year to settle down and work out routines. Having passed the awkward stage of rapid growth, we found ourselves in the position of seeking further improvements and refinements to better utilize our facilities and to enjoy more fully the pursuit of our favorite sport. Following are some shots from more recent years, which are being added here late in July. Gene Martineau and Elmer Manson. Gladys Martineau showing how a good crew should act, while her skipper watches. Way to go, Gene. Some of our Flying Scot fleet on a not too windy day. A dock-in party. Winifred and Merrill Sherburne at one of those famous lunches. Whatever else happens, don't drop the beer, eh, Bill? Whose life jacket is this? Sure doesn't fit me. Some of the Crystal crew at the Flying Scot Nationals in Charlevoix in 1977. Art Koch giving one of his famous monologues at a trophy presentation. Laurel Lurig, Don Toohey, and Howard Teitelbaum. Wayne Moore, Bill Morris, and Ron Lurie looking much too serious. Al Friend and Merrill Sherburne. Barb Wright with Max and Shirley Plowman. You gotta say cheese before you can have any punch. A couple of more groups of smiling sailors. We don't recognize him without his beard either, Laurel. Three famous skippers show a little skin. And not to be outdone, these crews follow suit. Get that centerboard up, Walt. This videotape presentation is an attempt during the 25th anniversary year to remind those of you who, like us, were in on the beginning of Crystal Sailing Club of some of the fun and adventure we shared. It may also serve to show those of you who joined us later how the club began.